At Leopoldville, the Congo Protestant Council gave us a very encouraging welcome, unanimously requesting further MAF surveys of their areas. During our 10 days in the city, we visited various government departments. The Belgian Director of Civil Aviation was courteous, but reminded us that the Congo was a large country, still very young in its development. Warning us not to expect too much, he gave us a map showing all the landing grounds, with emergency landing places too. Returning eastward, we flew up the Congo River, the longest in Africa after the Nile. From Leopoldville, it curves in an enormous arc across the whole country, draining thousands of square miles of equatorial lowland. We visited 4 mission stations along its course and dropped a bag of mail to a 5th. When we occasionally left the line of the river to take a more direct line to our next destination, we found that the continuous carpet of dense, tangled trees and creepers beneath us offered no navigational pinpoints at all. Nearing Irumu, on the northeastern border of Congo, the seemingly unending forests abruptly gave way to open grassland. We almost gasped. The change was dramatic. This was where Stanley, after 3 terrible years of trekking through jungle from the west coast to find Livingston, had at last come out into open country. We could understand why he sat down and wept. During the 3rd phase of our survey, we went to French Equatorial Africa, flying first to Bangassou, where every European in the town came out to give us a terrific welcome. From there, we flew eastwards along the southern edge of the country to some of the loneliest mission stations we had seen. The area was called in French Le Coin Perdu, the lost corner. We listened as one elderly missionary couple just sat and talked and talked and talked. It had been so long since they had someone they could speak to in their own language. They were incredibly grateful that I was able to repair their electrical generators. During our surveys, we twice flew south from Irumu past the steep sides of the Ruwenzori Mountains. The first time, the 16,000-foot peaks were heavily shrouded in forbidding clouds. They looked as awesome to us as Mount Sinai must have appeared to the children of Israel when Moses went up to meet with God on the summit. We carefully skirted the precipitous slopes, keeping in the clear under the heavy cloud base. By then, we were learning that dangerous tropical storms could rapidly spring out of the sky, apparently from nowhere. Dark, brooding walls of cloud could build up quickly to heights of 20,000 feet, hemming us in. Before we knew it, we could be totally encircled and trapped, sometimes with no way out and nothing but thick forest or steep hills below. That's why we adopted the saying within MAF. For every 1 look forward, take 2 looks back. We had to make sure we always had a way out. But it was 200 miles further south that destruction came to our plane. The danger came out of a clear sky with none of the visible drama of cloud and storm. Just the silent, inexorable pressure of the wind driving us relentlessly downwards into that sunlit tropical valley in the Burundi mountains. Chapter 5. Breaking New Ground. When Jack and I arrived in Nairobi, Tom Banham greeted us with tragic news. A light plane, flown by an outstanding young missionary who'd recently qualified as a private pilot, had just crashed on takeoff. He and his passengers had been killed. It was discovered that the plane's engine had failed. The accident shocked the mission community. People in Nairobi and beyond had been asking Tom how MAF intended to ensure its planes were kept airworthy. He told them that we had a qualified engineer flying with the Gemini and emphasized that high professional standards, both in flying and maintenance, were integral to all our plans. Tom had secured a very basic little upstairs office in the town at minimal rent. There was just room for the essentials. A kettle, of course, a desk, Tom himself, and Wangi, the Kenyan helper, who made tea, kept the place clean, and ran errands. For the first 24 hours it seemed that Jack, Tom and I talked non-stop. There was so much to tell and to plan. We gave the Gemini a very thorough check-over, changing oil, curing some oil leaks, adjusting flying controls and brakes. Tom had our program well organised. We faced over 6 months of intensive flying. Countries and places which had been mere names on maps in our London office were now to become very real to us. So were their varied peoples, living conditions, and travel needs. Our first and longest journey, which lasted a month, took us in a great loop of 3,000 miles, from Nairobi in East Africa, across the huge expanse of the Belgian Congo, now Zaire, to Leopoldville, the modern Kinshasa, in the extreme west, then back by a more northerly route. After that, we flew initially into the more isolated parts of Kenya and northwest to Arua in Uganda. From there we made a detailed exploration of northeast Congo, before flying a further 500 miles to French Equatorial Africa, where we visited some of the remotest places in the continent. Finally, we went south into Rwanda and Burundi, planning to return to Nairobi before we tackled the last phase, a survey of Tanganyika. During each visit, we faithfully worked through our set questionnaires. Apart from that, we saw, as we travelled, the dramatic differences in landscape and climate. We began to realise some of the problems of operating in the bush, and incidentally, also discovered how inadequate and unreliable were many of the maps then available. The responses of missionaries to our ideas were extremely varied. Some were enthusiastic, some cautious, some quite dismissive. The reactions of Africans to the plane varied too, especially where they'd never seen one before. "My airstrip is ready, but a little soft. Come at your discretion." The telegram was from a mission doctor who'd just cleared a strip in a remote region of southern Congo. 2/3 of the way across Africa, on our long survey trip to Leopoldville, we were being asked to try it out. Dr. Mark Poole and his wife had suffered from sleeping sickness as a result of frequent long journeys through tsetse-fly areas. A plane could have spared them that. To make their airstrip at Bulape, the doctor and his helpers had cleared 6,000 trees, filled the holes left by them, and levelled and rolled the surface. Knowing about all that effort, we were eager to land at Bulape. If, on arrival, we felt the strip was unsafe, we'd just have to fly off again. Dense, green tropical forests stretched like a sea in every direction beneath us, unbroken except for one spot. There the small sandy-coloured clearing, hacked out from the tall trees around, stood out clearly. As we circled directly above it, we were startled to see movement along a few narrow paths leading towards it. Hundreds of people were running as fast as they could, in spite of the scorching midday heat, converging on the clearing like a mass of swarming ants. "Any moment that airstrip's going to be covered with people," observed Jack. If that happened, landing would be impossible. Then we realised that everyone had stopped dead at the edge of the forest. No one ventured even a step onto the strip. We descended to about 400 feet, trying to size up the situation. "We'll go down and take a look," Jack concluded. He lowered the wheels, then the flaps, and keeping a fair amount of engine power, made a cautious approach to the clearing. "I'm making a dummy run first," he called across to me. We'll test the strip to see how firm it feels." He turned all his attention to the approach over the high trees at the beginning of the strip. Then, as we cleared them, we both concentrated on the strip itself. Skimming over the sandy ground, with the wheels just running along the surface, we were only subconsciously aware of the black faces watching from either side. Our focus was still on the strip. The wheels didn't sink in or leave any marks as they touched it. Jack pushed the throttle open and we climbed away. "At that speed we still had a lot of lift," he commented, "so it's not too good a test." He thought for a moment, then continued, "I think it's a bit soft, but not enough to stop us landing." We came round again and made a final, even more cautious approach. Holding on to some power again to cushion the landing, we touched down, the control column pulled back to prevent a nose-over in the soft sand. We decelerated quickly and came to an abrupt stop after only 120 yards. Jack switched off and we jumped out. The little wheels had sunk up to their axles. Crowds surged out from the forests engulfing the plain. In front of them were a tall American couple. "Welcome, welcome," Mark Poole called out above the clamour, and we were soon shaking hands. For the moment we ignored our bogged-down plane. "We thought the airstrip would be swarming with people when we tried to land," I said. "I warned them that if they stepped over the edge of the strip, the plane might kill them instantly," explained the doctor. "They have their own question," he added. "They want to know how you found their village when you've never come here before." We'd known that this small place in the forest might be hard to find, so had taken special pains with our navigation, checking our map and course carefully all the way. So the Balape villagers had seen the plane in the distance coming straight towards them and arriving directly overhead. That had really impressed them. "They're asking how many wives you have," the doctor interpreted further. "Important people in this area have lots of wives." They were shocked to learn that we had none. One chief present had 30. It was our turn to be shocked. We noticed another chief had lost many front teeth. The doctor explained this to us as well. Whenever there's a special occasion in their lives, a tooth is removed. He's had a number of special occasions, as you can see. I winced, wondering whether our landing would demand yet another tooth extraction. Over that weekend, 3,000 people came from all around, walking up to 30 miles through the bush to see the airplane. As usual on these visits, Jack and I were asked to preach at the Sunday services. We did it through interpreters, sometimes being interpreted into more than one tribal language. On this occasion, the church was crowded with people who wanted to hear what these strange flying men had to say. Throughout the weekend, Jack and I were wondering how we'd get the plane out. The newly cleared strip was very soft. We'd landed without damage, but our plane might now be unable to leave. A lesson for the future. Never land on a new, untried strip until you've gone in by road or trail to check it personally, however difficult that may be. We had to lighten the plane by taking out all the removable spares and equipment and let Jack fly off on his own. Dr. Poole drove with me over 90 miles of unimaginably rough roads to the nearest official airstrip where Jack was waiting.